It's official, folks. The Wednesday Night Wars are on. Dave Meltzer confirms. Also, Chris Jericho responds. We talk about it next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's all out. Ralph, it has begun. We got the news from originally Dave Meltzer, also WrestleVotes reported this, that NXT was moving to the USA Network starting September 18th. WWE confirms it. So the Wednesday Night Wars are on. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely official. It's kind of a surreal time in the wrestling industry right now because, when you kind of think back to the last time we had anything like this, it was probably like 20 plus years ago when we had the Monday Night Wars with WWE and WCW back in the day. And yeah, definitely interesting time within the wrestling industry. I know a lot of people are definitely pumped about it. I'm definitely one of them. And looking forward to just what's going to be happening in the future. Obviously, the announcement didn't necessarily come the way that we all expected it. So originally this was supposed to be reported on Monday Night Raw. I think everybody kind of panicked when it wasn't reported. And then obviously, I think whoever is subscribed to the WWE Network got the subscription update as I did. And it was made official that NXT will be going live 2 hours on the USA Network.
It's funny because we were talking about this morning, like 15 minutes before the email came out. This episode went from being what we're talking about now to basically a bash on Dave Meltzer reporting fake news. And then we get the email going back to saying, you know what? We're talking about the Wednesday Night Wars that are going to be happening starting. Well, we got October 2nd for AEW on TNT. We have NXT at USA starting on September 18th. But I want to also talk about Chris Jericho here because obviously he has ties to WWE and being a part of AEW right now. He's in the first ever AEW championship match, but he was on Busted Open Radio Monday. And he made some comments about this whole situation and the impending announcement at the time, basically saying it's reactionary. They didn't necessarily have to do it, but they're doing it. And, then he goes on to Twitter today and says, you know what? Good for NXT. It's going to be good for the wrestling industry for fans to decide one or the other. Then he posts on Instagram a picture of a missile that has Fozzy, do you want to start a war, spray painted on it. And then he finishes that off with another tweet saying, by the way, NXT and USA Network, you're welcome. So I like what Jericho's doing. He's stirring the pot like he always does, always creates that buzz and people talking about it. And this is really the first time Jericho kind of takes jabs at WWE. Usually it's Cody and the Bucks, whereas Jericho's trying to be the one that's like, oh, we don't want a war. We don't want a war. But now that he thinks the war is now here, so let me take shots now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely smart on his behalf. It kind of plays into the character he's trying to portray while also taking, a subtle snipe at WWE and NXT. He did congratulate NXT. Obviously, he's got ties to the WWE. A good majority of his career was spent in the WWE. And for what it's worth, I think going back like roughly, I don't know, 6 months ago, he was posting pictures with him and Triple H on Instagram and social media. So there's that relationship. So I think it also has to do with the aspect of him being proud for Triple H, who obviously is a former friend and former, co-worker of his. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to do certain things like this. There's been a lot of back and forth all along the way with AEW, whether it's been on Being the Elite or, Cody Rhodes taking some more not so subtle jabs at WWE, obviously with the throne spot, obviously with some of the things he's been saying about offering the alternative and a revolution, all that stuff. And that's all good and fine. But, when you start talking about a revolution, talking about changing the industry, especially when there's really only one major company that is kind of controlling the wrestling industry, it's kind of obvious who you're kind of referring to when you say those types of things. So, And Triple H, obviously, he made comments as well. So it's been back and forth, and now we're going to finally have legitimate head-to-head competition where we're going to see, who's putting on the best show, who's got the best product, who's got the best talent, and, that's what it's all about. That's what makes wrestling.
Now, I want to talk about the reactionary part of Jericho's comments here. I understand where he's coming from with the reactionary. Obviously, we heard about AEW going to TNT first, but then again, NXT has always aired on Wednesdays. It just was never on cable TV. It was on the WWE network. And now that they have an opportunity to go onto cable, why would you say no? So is this, I know people are pointing the finger at Vince McMahon as being the one that's making these decisions and saying he's the one that's reactionary and really causing this war that doesn't need to be there, I guess. But what if this is Triple H? What if it is Triple H that is kind of being the one that wanted NXT on the USA Network, because he's the one that called it a pissant company. He's the one, that has taken jabs at AEW on conference calls, on radio station interviews, like the one that, our local radio station here in Connecticut, they asked him about Cody Rhodes. He said Corey Rhodes instead. And then Triple H said, basically, if you don't know his name, then that's what my thoughts are on the whole situation. So he's been taking jabs too. So why is everyone putting the finger on Vince when it really could be Triple H this whole time?
Because at the end of the day, Vince McMahon's the owner of the company. So even though
True.
Triple H may have wanted this, I think at the end of the day, it had to come down to what Vince McMahon decided to do. Because, if NXT only exists because Vince McMahon allows it to exist within his company.
Good point.
Now, that being said, for all the people out there who are going to complain and say that you shouldn't be counter-producing or putting a counter product out from AEW and complaining about the reactionary portion of this, well, I'm sorry, this is business. Vince McMahon, Triple H, all the parties involved at the WWE don't really give a shit about your feelings, and they shouldn't. So for anybody who's going to complain about, WWE or NXT putting on a show to go head to head against AEW and saying, oh, well, why did you have to do that? It's business. If there is a local Walmart down the street and all of a sudden they want to put like a friggin' Stu Leonard's up the street from that, well, guess what? It's competition. They're going to go to head to head. So it is what it is. There's no reason to complain, and the fans are going to get what they want. They have a choice. They can either watch NXT or they can watch AEW. But to the fans that are going to complain and call Vince McMahon names and say how he's greedy and he's this and that, look, the last time another wrestling company was put on major television where they had live and they went head to head, Vince McMahon nearly went out of business. So you can't really blame him for trying to protect his company, his investment, and his talents. I mean, that's just a part of business. So for anybody who doesn't understand that, I'm sorry, but Vince McMahon doesn't care. And in all honesty, you shouldn't be butthurt about it. Grow up, get over it, move on.
But here's the thing, though. NXT fans are basically the same fans that are going to be watching AEW. It's the same fan base. So if Vince McMahon does this and pisses off NXT fans and WWE fans, essentially you are forcing their hand to pick AEW instead of NXT because of something like this, where at a time you don't necessarily have to make a choice. Now it seems like you have to make a choice between watching NXT live or watching AEW live. And speaking of choosing between the two, let's veer off here into the next section of our discussion. Which would you watch come October 2nd when you have to choose between the two live? NXT or AEW?
Well, the answer to that is very simple. You don't have to choose. There's amazing advancements in technology for anybody, and one of them being the WWE network and the other one being DVR. So you can essentially watch both.
Now, if you don't have either, if you don't have the WWE network and you don't have a DVR and you have to choose one, and whatever you choose, you can't flip back and forth during commercials. You have to pick one. Which one you picking?
The better of the two products, and to me, the more proven product and the product that's been more consistent all along has been NXT. So I'd probably watch NXT over AEW, at least for now. Obviously, the first week that this is going to be on AEW's first show, I'm going to watch because I'm interested. I want to see what they have to offer. I think they have a lot of talent there. I think they've made a lot of bold claims and a lot of big, they have a lot of big aspirations and a lot of things that they want to achieve. And I'm certainly interested. I'm intrigued. I want to see what the alternative is going to be. But I've been very vocal on this show and in previous shows and a lot of our conversations saying that WWE's best show and their best product over the past year and a half and the best storylines with the best talent has been NXT. And I'm sure you could attest to that. I've said that numerous
Yep.
times on our shows. To me, NXT is a proven product. You know, every time I've gone to an NXT show, which I've been to maybe 4 or 5 now, off the top of my head, live, the crowd, the response, the atmosphere, everything about it is just amazing. The talent, the storylines, just the little subtle things of the storylines, the way it's run. It all seems like the wrestlers have one goal in mind and they're all working towards one thing, and that's entertaining everybody and putting on a damn good product. So, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to watch both of them. You know, like I said, I'm certainly intrigued by AEW, but to me, my go-to has been NXT. I'm not going to veer course off that. I'm going to stay true to that. But I'm obviously going to watch both of them. I like AEW. AEW has been a good product, but it's very, very much unproven to this point.
I totally understand where you're coming from, but me personally, I'm going to go with AEW on this. I always felt like the ones who need to prove more are going to show that they are the proven product after all. And that's what AEW is in a position right now. They just want it more. You look at sports all the time. The team that just wants it more ends up winning. You see what Cody's talking about, the Revolution and the Bucks saying they want to have the best tag team division in the world. Kenny Omega wants to have the best wrestling in the world. If you focus on that and you want to put that product out there and you visualize that and you believe that you can do it, you can do it. They have the financial backing with the Khan family. They have the production backing with TNT. They have seasoned veterans on the roster with Cody, with Dustin, with Jericho and Moxley. So it's there. They have the star power over NXT. Now, yes, you have Gargano, you have Adam Cole and Velveteen Dream and Matt Riddle, but they have never had mainstream exposure yet. Whereas Cody Rhodes has, Jon Moxley has, Dustin Rhodes has, Chris Jericho obviously has. You have guys that are also in the background that are coming from WWE that can help out on that end, like a Dean Malenko, possibly an Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard. You know, there's guys from multiple generations, from here, now, in the past. So I think AEW is, although we have not seen an episode yet, I think they're in a better position right now to succeed with a 2-hour show than NXT, simply because they want it more. And I'm not saying NXT doesn't want it, but AEW right now shows to me they want it more.
So there's a few things I'm going to disagree with. The simple notion that they want it more, to me, yeah, I think they want it. I think they want to prove a lot of people wrong, and I think they're inspired to produce an alternative to what WWE is. But I just feel like NXT has been the alternative to what you're used to seeing on the WWE, and on obviously Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. And it's just a better version. And it's not only just a better version, it's a more proven version than AEW. So you look at the long-term success and you look at how NXT has been able to do certain things. And probably the most notable thing is when you look at the main card, whether it's Raw or SmackDown, it is littered with top-tier talent and supremely talented wrestlers that have gone through NXT. Now, have they been utilized correctly and really put in a position where they could show how good they truly are when they got to the main card? No, and that's probably a discussion for another time. But, I mean, there are just guys upon guys. Your Finn Balor's, your Kevin Owens, your Shinsuke Nakamura's, the Revival. I mean, these are guys that were having classic matches that 10 years from now, down the road, we're going to look back at and be like, these are some of the very best matches you're ever going to see. These are some of the best characters you're ever going to see. Not only that, you talk about the experience. When it comes down to experience, when you look at just how the companies are structured, okay, AEW certainly is a company that prides itself on being a company that is for wrestlers, run by wrestlers, and that's all great. When you look at NXT, it's essentially the same thing, but to a better extent and a more experienced extent. And what I mean by that is this. Triple H has been the main top guy that's been pretty much building NXT from the ground up for the last, I don't know, 7 years, I think, something like that, since 2012, I think, off the top of my head.
Yep, 2012.
The product's been great. The matches have been great. When you look at the psychology of the matches and the development of the wrestlers, it's all been great, and he's been the guy overseeing all of that. The other thing I want to add to that is this. If there's anybody you want to learn from in terms of how to run a company, how to run a effective wrestling company, there's no better person to learn from than Vince McMahon. Let's be honest here. Triple H has been groomed by the McMahon family and put in a position where he's going to run NXT. And I mean, if you're going to learn from somebody, why not learn from the very best that there's ever been? And I know a lot of people want to look at Vince right now and talk about how he's old and he's out of touch. And, you know, those things may be true, but the wrestling industry may not have mainstream acceptance without the existence of Vince McMahon and what he's done for the industry. And that can't be overlooked. And I don't think people should be overlooking the fact that Triple H has been essentially groomed by him. So when you compare the guys at the top, yeah, you have the Young Bucks and you have those guys in positions where they're going to be booking and making certain decisions. But, you know, if you look at like baseball, you can be a really good baseball player and suck at managing. And I'm not saying they're going to suck, but, you know, it doesn't mean just because they're good wrestlers, they're going to be good at running a wrestling company. And that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens with that. My main point with that is this. Look, Triple H has run NXT. He's built it from the ground up. He's been successful at doing it, and I'm going to go where it's been proven, a proven commodity. So I'm going to go there and choose Triple H. The other thing is this. When you think about who's training these guys, AEW certainly has certain guys there that are going to be able to help them train. Cody Rhodes, Moxley's, Jericho's, all great. When you look at NXT, obviously you've got Triple H. The other guy you got there, nobody should overlook this, is Shawn freaking Michaels, literally one of the best wrestlers of all time. He's there. He's training these guys. He's working with these guys. He's energized. He's excited. So, you know, I think that, yes, the guys at AEW have a point to prove, but I feel like the guys at NXT are out to prove a point as well. And, you know, we're going to see. Once this goes to TV, once they're head to head, we're going to see who's got the better product, the better roster, better storylines, TV production. All of that is going to matter. So we'll see once it gets to TV.
And one more thing is going to matter when it comes to both these promotions. Wins and losses are going to matter. And especially with AEW, I think that is going to be something that's very unique when it comes to how things progress in AEW. The fact that wins and losses are going to matter. And if they keep that going and make it more of a sport with statistics like Tony Khan wants it to be, that's going to be huge. Also, again, we're talking about Cody Rhodes here, who is the son of Dusty Rhodes. Now, Dusty Rhodes had a big part on how NXT grew in its infancy back in 2012 to, you know, basically until his death. Cody Rhodes, I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and you're seeing it with the way his matches have been booked, the way they've been told on the road to All Out, on the road to Double or Nothing, how they're told in the ring. You obviously see Dusty through, you see Dusty through Cody. And I think his influence is going to be the be all end all to AEW success.
Well, you're going to see influence from him on both sides, really, because if you think back, Dusty was so involved with the development of NXT.
Right.
And now, so I think somebody actually tweeted that out earlier. Maybe it was Ryan Satt, and I'm not sure.
I think it was.
But just seeing the influence he's had, not only in obviously the development of NXT and the creation of NXT, but also, you know, Cody Rhodes being one of the guys that's mostly involved with, you know, everything going on in All Elite Wrestling. So, yeah, that's definitely an interesting point, and a good point to bring up too.
Now, at the end of this, we all talk about the AEW versus NXT war, but when you think about it, who really wins at the end?
The fans. The fans. I'm me as a fan. I'm happy as a pig in shit right now. Just thinking about, you know, AEW, NXT going head to head. I'm happy that it's actually two comparable types of wrestling and two comparable types of brands and companies. And what I mean by that is this: had they chose to, whatever, let's say AEW chose to go on Monday nights or go head to head against Raw or SmackDown, whatever the case
Right.
is, it's not likely that Raw was going to change all that much. It's not likely that SmackDown would change all that much. They're not going to rebrand. They're too big. They have too much notoriety. There's too much involvement. NXT, in terms of the style, the feel, the fan base, there's more of a crossover, I think, that you're going to get with the NXT fans and the AEW fans. So, at the end of the day, I think it's good for everybody. I think the fans certainly went out in this. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. The fans win at the end. And what's also good about this is you don't necessarily have to watch both at the same time or have to choose one because of, like you mentioned before, there is DVRs. The WWE Network will air NXT the following day. You have Hulu. You have, there's other ways to watch these shows outside of watching them live, and that's going to be great. So, like I say, I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The war is fan created, not the companies creating them. Although some can argue that, but I say it's fan created. But there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be a strict AEW fan, that's fine. If you want to be a strict NXT fan, that's fine. But if you're a wrestling fan, you got to be happy that you actually get a choice. For the first time in like 20 years, you actually have to choose between the two. And there's nothing wrong with whatever decision you make because in your mind, that's the best decision.
There's one more point I want to make specifically about the TV deals. So,
yep.
Obviously, we know that NXT is going to be airing on the USA Network. And the one thing I would mention about that, and the one thing I want to point out is USA and WWE as a collective whole have had a partnership for, I can't even tell you off the top of my head, years upon years. So that's the NXT, I feel like, is going to be allowed and afforded certain liberties with what they're able to do on TV because WWE has essentially earned the trust of the network, right?
Mm-hmm.
With AEW, let's not forget one of the primary reasons WCW failed back in the day. It's because WCW was so limited by AOL Time Warner, who still is essentially influencing what is going to happen on TNT today.
That's true, but
right. So
but none of the executives are a part of this anymore.
I get that. I'm just saying, I mean, let's not. AEW is going to be an alternative, and from what we've seen from them so far on pay-per-view, and granted, Tony Khan did say this isn't what we're going to show you guys on TV. It's been a little more, I don't know how you want to say it. It's been a little more edgy, a little more risque, and I don't know. What will TNT let them do those types of things? I can tell you that WWE and their relationship and what they've done with USA Network, NXT would probably have a little bit of an easier time of getting away with certain things if they wanted to push the envelope a little bit. Whereas where AEW isn't necessarily a proven commodity yet, so they may be a little handcuffed. So just something to point out, something to keep in mind. But I figured I'd throw that out there because it was something I was thinking about when we were going over certain points that we were going to discuss.
Yeah, no problem. And great discussion here between AEW and NXT. Which are you going to be watching on Wednesday nights? Not necessarily have to make your choice, but if you had to make a choice, vote on the poll above my head. Comment below why you're making that decision. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.